I send that email out.
No.
But it doesn't matter because
Not sure if you could hear me, but Councilor Conti, you can start your committee meeting at 6 o'clock first. Should be a short committee meeting, and then we'll get the special meeting started with the mayor and the new budget director.
Okay, I have 6 o'clock. Can everybody hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Loud and clear, Rich.
Good, good.
Hey,
Thank you, Peter.
Rick, you have to hold on a second
Sure.
until I pull the graphic down.
Okay, sure, I'll wait.
You can go, Rick.
Okay, it's May 26th, it's 6 o'clock, and I'd like to call the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Sitting on my committee is Councilor Dolan and Councilor Waterman. I have just one motion to bring before you this evening. From the docket of June 2nd, 2020, I entertain a motion to suspend part of the Community Development Block Grant Citizens Participation Process, which calls for a public hearing to amend the program year 2019 budget to include $256,059 in CARES, that's C-A-R-E-S Act Fund, and authorize the submission of an amendment to the program year 2019 budget to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development on or before June 12th, 2020. Authorization on all three requests are needed on or before June 2nd, 2020.
Second.
Motion calls for a second. Thank you, Councilor Dolan. So I got a memo from, I think we all got a memo from Dorothy Brissett today talking about the fact that when the budget is increased by more than 25%, it typically calls for another public hearing, but HUD is allowing the suspension of that. And that,
Can anybody hear me?
yes, we hear you loud and clear, Councilor Jackson. Can you hear us?
I can't hear anything.
No. So this plan, when we go to the full council meeting, will require two motions. One will be for the budget appropriation of $473,000, and the second will be this one to take out the CARES Act. Is there any questions? I hear no questions, but I hear nothing, so I'm suspecting I may not be
I have
connected
none.
properly.
I have no questions.
Okay,
I don't have any questions, Councilor Conti. I heard you loud and clear.
good.
And thank you for keeping your thumb on both of these because the CARES Act, as we all know, is a bit unique, and we're happy. My only additional comment would be that we're happy that we have received that, or will receive that additional $256,000.
Okay, so the motion's in order. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I have to abstain. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's right. Councilor Waterman abstains. And I say aye, so the motion passes unanimously among those voting. And that concludes the business that the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee has to bring before the council this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I declare the Capital Improvement City Development Committee adjourned at 6:04 PM. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Withers, are you on the line? I haven't heard you yet. Yeah. Mute.
I am here, President Cooper.
Okay, we're just going to wait 1 minute and then we'll start.
Okay. What is it? Oh, it came? Is that the thing? Sharon got debit cards.
No, this isn't the federal thing.
Oh, this is for the
The car. The Honda.
this is to pay for the repair, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So,
So you sign it and
yeah,
you pay
give
it.
it to them. Is that what the
You wanna sign
estimate
it
was?
after this?
Oop.
Yeah, this is-
Right. So I'm having him sign it, I'm gonna deposit it, and then we'll just pay that. All right, so this should be. It's my aunt's dad, I don't think they would want that. Right.
All right, so I'll call this meeting of this municipal council, special meeting of the municipal council to order at 6:05 PM. Mr. Withers, would you kindly read the notice of the special meeting?
May 20, 2020.
Steve, you're muted.
We lost you, Steve.
Oh, he's
I heard
muted.
May 20.
Muted.
I'm muted, I'm sorry. May 20th.
Just shut the door, Paul, then you won't hear it.
What's that?
Go ahead, Steve. Sorry
Hey.
about that.
Date, May 20th, 2020. 2, members of the municipal council from Mark J. Cooper, council president. Councilors, by authority of Article 2, Section 2-7C of the Attleboro Home Rule Charter, I hereby call a special meeting of the municipal council as follows. Date, Tuesday, May 26th, 2020. Time, 6 PM. Place, remote link. Purpose, to discuss any legal matters before the council. Sincerely, Mark J. Cooper, council president. CC Mayor Paul Heroux.
Thank you. At this time, before we go into the special meeting and suspend the rules for the mayor to present the budget message this evening, I just want to let the public know, and all of the council is aware, but the city lost a
For some
friend
reason, I
with the
don't have
passing of
any
George
sound.
Ross. And as you all know, George was a veteran, served on the Housing Authority, the Planning Board, City Council for 7 terms, and state rep, really to name a few. He gave countless hours to the city that he loved, and he will be missed by all his friends and family. And our condolences to his family and friends. As you know, George was the Ward 2 councilor before me. I was sworn in. George swore me in this council chambers in May of 2011, and took me on my first tour of duty, he called it, and drove me around the city and showed me all the things or the problem spots that he was dealing with, and we maintained a friendship from then. And George was the first person that coined for me the word frenemy, I think that he loved the city and he will be missed. And nobody can deny that he loved the city of Attleboro, and we'll all miss George. So I wanted to just make those comments. I think that we all had different relationships with George, and we appreciated them. And with that said, I'll move on to I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. The reason for suspending the rules this evening is because we have invited the mayor to address the council this evening to present the budget message for the next fiscal year. The mayor is here in the council chamber to do that, and will be presenting that to us tonight. You will all get copies. You all get a PDF. version of the budget message, and I've already prefaced the request for the ad that Jeremy and Virginia will work on tomorrow, and the Excel version of the budget for government, general government, and water and wastewater, and those will be forthcoming to all of you. So tonight is really for the mayor to let the council and the public know his plan, and then he and Jeremy will come back to the public hearing to give us any updates that may have happened between today and the public hearing. So with that said, I'll take a roll call vote beginning
Second.
with Blair on suspending the rules.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Mr. Blair,
Here.
Ms. DeSimone,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Waterman,
Here.
Vice President Jackson. Vice President Jackson.
I don't think she can hear.
Yeah.
Looks like she's muted. Kate, hold the space bar down. See if that works. Shake your head.
like she can't hear us.
All right, where are we at?
Yep, so I would just go to the next, we at Delicio.
Mr. Delicio,
Yes.
Mr. Cobus,
Yes.
Ms. Dolan. Ms. Dolan,
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
President Cooper,
Yes,
Ms. Jackson. 10 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you, motion passes. We are operating under suspended rules. And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr.
There's a bit of a delay.
Thank
Going
you.
Yes.
to the-
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Kate. We can hear you now.
I'm having a hard time with it.
Yeah, that's okay. The mayor's going to present
No, I'm
the
not
budget-
muted.
the budget message.
Mr. President, thank you to you, and through you, thank you to the municipal council. The first thing I'd like to do,
It's not.
as I've done in the past 2 years, is give credit where credit's due. This budget couldn't have been done without
Yes.
three particular people. There were a lot more
Yes.
people than these three, but Barry Lacasse, he started the process. Deb Gould, she was instrumental in
What's
this
going on?
budget as well, and our new budget director, Jeremy.
I did do that.
Without the three of them, we wouldn't have had the product that we have in front of us now. So I'm submitting this annual budget
Do it again.
for the city of Attleboro for fiscal year 2021. This year, my budget priorities are no layoffs in any city department and to maintain city services to the best we can during these challenging times because of the global pandemic. Bring it closer. Would you like me to start over? No. Okay. First, let me start by saying that while this budget is balanced, there is no city department that is adequately funded, staffed, or equipped. Cuts to any department only hurt that department. My job has been to create a budget in a way that no one department is given favorable treatment over another. All city departments and employees are of value to the citizens that they serve. First, I'm going to talk about the budget process. The overall process of doing the budget this year was the same as in past years. However, this budget was created in 3 different phases. The first phase involved our previous budget director, Barry Lacasse, creating a preliminary budget. Barry calculated anticipated revenues. The department submitted the requested amounts. Additionally, Barry and the school finance director, Mark Furtado, pre-conferenced and agreed on a number that if the school department can operate within, the city will agree to that budget. This first phase lasted up until about early February. The second phase, between February and April, was where I went through the different departments' requested budgets with the department heads, and we made cuts to the proposed deficit, to reduce the proposed deficit. Not all departments needed to be cut from, as they already presented a lean budget. Others were optimistic that some projects long overdue could be funded. It was my hope to provide a 2% COLA for every city employee. The pandemic and subsequent self-induced economic slowdown reduced revenues at the local and state levels, making a COLA not something that the city is giving any exempt employee and not something that we are going to offer unions during contract negotiations in FY21. During this second phase, Barry was consulted after he volunteered to help and review the FY21 budget draft. The third phase was where the new budget director, Jeremy Stoll, took over in late April, and with the assistance from Deb Gould and further consultation with Barry Lacasse, revised revenue projections, further updated the departments, and finalized a balanced budget. We started this year's budget with over a $2 million deficit. As you know, this means that the desired expenditures from the departments were greater than the city's anticipated revenues by $2 million. This was further compounded by the loss of revenues from the global pandemic. We estimate that local receipts are going to be down by more than $700,000 out of the over $12 million in local receipts, a significant loss of revenue. What adds extra uncertainty is that we still do not know what the state is going to provide for unrestricted government aid, which we call local aid, and Chapter 70 funding, which is our school funding. Historically, a governor's January budget proposal has been the worst case scenario whereby the House of Representatives and then the Senate would budget more to municipalities. This year, with state revenues already being down several $billion and with unclear projections for the coming months, the governor's budget proposal has become the best case scenario. I have urged the state delegation to preserve local aid and Chapter 70 funding. They cannot make any promises, but they are aware of the importance of the state funding. If anything changes and state aid is less than the governor's January budget proposal, we are going to have to revisit how we fund this budget, which I will discuss at the end of this budget message. I have also urged the federal delegation to provide aid to the city due to the loss of revenues. That has yet to be determined by the federal government, and I'll talk about that at the end of the budget message as well. Some of the budget highlights in this budget include every budget's goals always need to be realistic and achievable. However, due to the loss of revenues, this year's goals need to be much more modest than in years past. Some of the highlights of this budget include funding to meet all annual debt obligations, funding the school department at $2.25 million above net school spending for the third year in a row. And included in this $2.25 million is an additional $200,000 added to the Special Education Stabilization Fund, which the council and I created in FY20, and the council, we together, funded at $200,000. With this appropriation of another $200,000, it would bring the total amount to $400,000. Additionally, some of the highlights: funding the capital improvements line with $50,000, which pays for capital needs for police, fire, DPW, and other departments. It's my intention to use free cash to bolster that line when free cash becomes available in the fall. Funding a renovation for the fire department headquarters with $25,000. And anybody who has been to the Union Street headquarters and seen their kitchen, I think they'll agree that a new kitchen is desperately needed at the fire department headquarters. Increasing our annual OPEB contribution to $50,000 from the historical $35,000, and this is looked favorably upon by the credit rating agencies. We're funding the police department with $50,000 for a police car out of the budget, which allows us to start to purchase more police cars each year without interest and closing costs on the debt. Each year we plan to increase this amount and phase out the use of debt service, and I'll talk about more of that a little bit later. This year we're also combining the capital improvements coordinator position with the budget director position, which frees up money to hire a computer programmer operator who reports to the MIS director but is assigned to police and fire information technology needs. So a little bit of the background on that is, I think everybody knows Gail Clark. She was the capital improvements coordinator. She left the city for another job at the Cape. And rather than hiring somebody to replace her, what I did was I combined her position with the budget director's position. Historically, the budget director, Barry Lacasse, he did the budget and miscellaneous projects because of his law degree, and he threw everything and anything at Barry, and he had his hands full all the time. But he basically had two categories, budget and other stuff. With the new budget director position, what I did was I combined the two into, the budget director and capital improvements, because the capital improvements involve the use of debt, and it only makes sense that the budget director would be intimately connected with those capital projects because of the debt they take out. With the money that we were spending on the capital improvements director, that's the money that's going to be used to fund this position. And it's, just to be clear, it's not a new position, it's just an unfilled, it's a vacant position. A new position, as you know, would have to go before the council. So the MIS department, as I've been told, hasn't had any growth for over 30 years. 30 years, not 3 years, 30 years. The technology needs of police and fire have grown substantially, and because of their needs, the two people we have, Dan and Bill, and the MIS department, they just don't have enough hours in the day to take care of the needs of police and fire. And so that's the reason we decided to move forward with the direction we're doing with that. So additionally, in this budget, there are no increases to the health insurance rates. In this budget, we funded the 53rd week, so we don't need to do a transfer later. For possibly the first time ever, maybe the first time in a long time, and President Cooper, I know this is something that you wanted to see, we are funding the annual fireworks celebration with $20,000. We're also increasing the number of senior citizens who can participate in the senior tax abatement program from 130 to 150. And this was an initiative that started with the City Council. I believe legislation or the ordinance was passed to increase it from 130 to 150. And the reason for that was that this much needed funding request is because there are more than 30, or actually right now there's about 30 seniors who are currently on the tax abatement program waitlist. We also budgeted interest payments on debt service for the repair of the library. As you know, we're paying about $7 million to fix up the library. And where we budgeted interest payments on the debt service payments for repairing the leaking roofs at Brennan and Wamsutta schools. Again, President Cooper, this is something you and I have talked about, and a sense of outrage that you had that the roofs at Brennan were pouring in the gymnasium. Dave Sawyer and I finally had a heart-to-heart, and we said, are we going to continue to wait for the state MSBA, even though they've supported us with other projects? Are we going to wait for them to fund the fixing of these roofs that have been leaking for 20 years? And we said, no, enough's enough. If they had been fixed 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we wouldn't be spending $4 million on these roofs. We'd be spending a lot less. If we continue to wait, the cost is only going to increase. We were retiring debt. We made that a priority. We were able to budget the payments on that debt, and that's part of this year's budget. At present, based on anticipated revenues, we do not need to use free cash or stabilization to balance the budget. Part of that was we're also fortunate that we did not spend more than $213,000, which is a very small amount, for snow removal this year. I also want to take this moment to address that while it's not in the budget, it's worth noting that we are using free cash reserves starting the current fiscal year, FY20, to set aside $100,000 a year for the next 4 years to pay for over $400,000 in fire department self-contained breathing apparatus equipment that OSHA is going to require updating in about 4 or 5 years' time. So by setting aside $100,000 in our free cash reserves, which is just going to get renewed every October by the state DOR, what we're going to be doing is setting that aside, and in 4 or 5 years, when OSHA comes down and says we need to update this equipment, we'll be able to do it all in one swoop without stressing the budget, without scrambling to come up with the money. We're going to start saving for it now. So those are some of the budget highlights, but I'd like to talk about a couple of the specific bigger picture issues inside the budget. If we talk about Capron Park Zoo revolving account pays for several salaries at the zoo. These are positions that we bring back each year in anticipation of summer revenues. But with the zoo operating at a limited capacity due to the global pandemic and zoo revenues not funding the revolving account at full capacity, we do not anticipate bringing back all of these positions this summer, as the zoo is not going to be operating at a full capacity. It will be reduced capacity. More details about that will be provided by the Park and Forestry Department during their budget presentation. Concerning rubbish collection, in years past, the city has benefited from a trash and recycling program that was relatively inexpensive relative to the number of services provided by Waste Management. Our contract has been up for renewal, though, for quite a while, and starting in late 2018 and concluding in early 2020, over the course of about 18 months, the health agent, the solid waste administrator, the previous budget director, the solicitor at times, and I met with Waste Management to renegotiate our contract. We believe that we are presenting a contract that offers more services than surrounding towns and for about the same or less rate. One notable change is our recycling rate. The current contract is $15 per ton for recycling. However, because of changes to the international trade of recycled goods, Waste Management has been losing money from the previously negotiated price of $15 per ton. And on January 21st, 2020, at my request, your body voted on a one-time settlement of $80,000 to keep Waste Management from writing the current contract with the city off as a loss, which would have left the city in a position to immediately find a new rubbish vendor. The consequence of this would have been a greater cost than the current contract. It's of some comfort to know that most municipalities are paying more than $100 per ton for recycling, with some as $150. We negotiated a rate of $90 per ton. This is an increase, and that is because the previous rate was far below market value for that service and the change in the international trade of recycled materials. Some other changes to the program include decreasing the materials that flow from other local towns' residents into Attleboro for pickup at Attleboro residents' home by limiting the number of bulk item pickup. So let me go off on digress from my message for a second and talk a little bit about that. The health department is going to talk more about this in greater detail, but for the time being, what the health department is aware of, they know, they've got examples of it, is that other residents from other communities bring bulk items into Attleboro because we have a very generous program. They do it for friends and they do it for family, and they say, bring it here and put it out in front of my house and it will be taken away. How many times does one house have to put out a flat screen TV in the course of a year, or an old tube TV? How many times does one house put out a refrigerator or a couch? There's only so many couches we need per year. There's only so many tube TVs that we can put out from a house before it becomes really obvious that there's bulk items coming from other communities. The changes to the program, which the health department will talk about in more detail, aims to stop that practice. So we were also able to maintain 4 times per year compost pickup, that's twice in April and twice in November, a service not available to many communities. And it's not in the budget message, but one final significant change is that much like we have the green recycling toter for use by city residents, we're now going to have a blue recycling toter, provided the council approves the contract, for trash. It'll be a smaller toter than the recycling toter, but it's a slightly larger size than the average trash barrel, which the average trash barrel is usually something about 30 gallons or 33 gallons. This trash toter will be, I believe, 35 or 36 gallons. Couple more things to talk about. The school department, this is the third year, and I'm going to repeat myself for a moment. This is the third year in a row where my budget proposal reflects my promise of funding the school department above $2.25 million above net school spending, which includes the $200,000 for the Special Education Stabilization Fund. And as I said earlier, never before in the city's history have we had a Special Education Stabilization Fund. This body created the fund in this account last year, and we should be proud that we have one now. And with the council's support, we'll grow this fund, ensuring that the school department has the money it needs if there is an unexpected influx of special education students. Additionally, the importance of a Special Education Stabilization Fund or account is that when the school district experiences any financial crisis, it sends a ripple throughout the rest of the city government's ability to provide services. This fund prevents that shock to the rest of the city. I want to talk a moment about the debt policy. The city treasurer had asked me to provide a debt policy, that my administration operates under. This is a philosophical approach to a pragmatic issue. So this is sort of my philosophy about what we should do with debt and what direction I'm taking the city in with respect to debt. And I provided this to her just a couple weeks ago, the city treasurer being her, a couple weeks ago, and I included that as a section in this budget message. The debt policy of my administration is as follows. In the simplest terms, capital items that are used over the course of time should be paid for over the course of time. Having said that, there are certain capital needs that have an expense level not great enough to warrant debt. In these cases, we use free cash or draw from the capital line. We're going to revisit the police issue again, the police cruiser issue. The purchase of police cruisers is a recurring cost. It's predictable, and it is affordable enough to budget without incurring debt if we plan. And that planning is starting with this budget. The police chief would prefer that we budget for cruisers rather than borrow for them, as it allows the purchase of 9 cruisers over a 3-year period of time rather than 7 cruisers over a 3-year period of time. I vetted the idea with the treasurer and the auditor, and this is a new direction that I'm moving to. Additionally, it's my goal not only to maintain the current debt capacity, but to increase the debt capacity by less than 1% during my tenure. The reason that we need an increased debt capacity is that there are many unmet needs in the various departments. We have hundreds of capital needs that are important to the delivery of services to citizens. By increasing our debt capacity, we will be able to better meet the needs of the departments and therefore provide better services to the citizens of the city. Increasing our debt capacity can be done in a way that is mindful of our credit rating, our ability to pay, and without interfering with salaries and other regular operating budget needs. Lastly, and possibly most importantly, no debt is taken on without first establishing in advance our ability to make annual payments. Annual payments can be done either through using retired payment or dedicating new growth to the city debt service. So looking ahead and in conclusion, this budget's recurring expenditures are fully funded by recurring revenues, meaning that the normal operations of the city do not need to be subsidized by free cash or stabilization. There is one use of stabilization that I don't consider using as a means to balance the budget. This budget is also presenting a request to use $150,000 from the city's $4.5 million stabilization to fund anticipated expenses related to safely providing city services in the era of COVID-19, which we expect will be reimbursed from the state or federal government. So I'm requesting that we use $150,000 from the city stabilization. This is not, just to be clear, this is not something that we need to do on a normal year. And we are doing this, we're using the city stabilization. It was actually, given credit where it's due, is actually the city auditor, Deb Gould. It was her idea to use the city stabilization. I was suggesting that we use free cash for these, what are going to be reimbursable expenses, but she suggested the stabilization, and I took her advice on that. But this is something that's not part of a normal budget, just to be clear. So the picture of state and federal reimbursement to municipalities for these expenses remains murky, but the city expects a higher levels of government to step in and provide relief soon. The city continues to explore every available avenue to recoup some or all of these costs. And sort of in conclusion, it's very important to note that this budget assumes that local aid and Chapter 70 will remain consistent with the governor's budget submission. So this budget is assuming that we're going to get what the governor proposed in January. That's a big assumption. Due to the loss of state revenues because of the economic shutdown to keep people safe from the pandemic, if state revenues do not live up to the governor's January budget, we are going to have a revenue shortage. We don't know what's going to happen with that. We don't know if this is going to happen or not, but we have a plan. If the city is not provided with revenues consistent with the governor's January budget proposal, we have several tools available to help us rebalance this budget. These include, and in my preference of order, the use of free cash. Right now we have about $1 million in free cash that we could use to balance the budget. We have $4.5 million of stabilization. We have furloughs. That's where exempt employees would take a pay cut and also a reduction in work, and we would propose that to the unions as well. And lastly, we have layoffs. But there is one extra tool that we believe is going to come through to us, and that's the federal government expanding the coverage of the CARES Act, because right now CARES Act covers reimbursable costs associated, unexpected reimbursable costs associated with COVID-19. It does not cover the loss of revenues. But I've spoken with Senator Markey's office, Senator Warren's office, and Joe Kennedy himself, and they are all advocating for that within the House and within the Senate. So it's too soon to know if we are going to need to use any of these other tools to rebalance the budget if the Massachusetts House and Senate do not provide what the governor offered in January. Time will tell, but we will work our way through that if it happens. That concludes the budget message. I'd like to show a couple of newspaper articles from recent weeks, though. This one is from Monday, May 18th, and on the front page, it talks about a tax hike being thought of in Plainville because of budget woes. We're not going to have this type of headline here in Attleboro because of the work that Barry Lacasse has done, the work that Deb Gould has done, the work that Jeremy Stoll is doing, the work that this council has done with me as the mayor for the past 2 years and the previous mayor over several years. Same thing could be said of this headline, Friday, May 15th. North prepares for budget difficult, uncertain times. I don't think we're going to have a headline like this in Attleboro, again, because of people like Barry, Deb, Jeremy, the deliberative process of this body, the work that the previous mayor and that I've put into getting us into a position where we are actually, despite the economic challenges, we have had no layoffs in the city, and we have a balanced budget before us with no layoffs. So with that, I can take questions next time we meet in person, but did you want me to present my enterprise budget of water and wastewater?
Can you hear me? Yes, I think just one comment, Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. I know the presentation and the budget will go out, like we said earlier. I do see the stabilization funds coming in your communication tonight. That'll get assigned to committee, but as part of the list of deliverables to the council through this process, if you, Jeremy, could give us the breakdown in the stabilization funds, what the current balance is, what the current limit is, if you're planning to change it as a result of this, that would be helpful as we go through this process. I know it will come up, so I just wanted to get that out of the way, but feel free to move on to water or wastewater at this time.
Sure. Very briefly, to your point, so we have $4.5 million in stabilization. We plan to take out just $150,000, which would be reimbursable. And when we're reimbursed from the state or federal government, would likely be reimbursable. I can't make any promises about that, but likely reimbursable. We would just put that money right back in, and we would continue to grow the stabilization as we have in the past. But as I said before, we don't know what's going to happen with House and Senate funding from the state level, and we may need to tap that in a worst case scenario. So if you'd like, I'll move on to the enterprise water and wastewater. So this memo serves as my budget message for the water and wastewater departments, respectively. I get right to the point in my budget message. There has only been one water department fee increase in the last 10 years, and that was in FY 2014, voted on in June of 2013. So it was 7 years ago that the fees were voted on to, the rate was voted on to be increased in the water department and wastewater department. Fee increases and rate increases are not what anyone wants to promote. However, the cost of salaries, materials, maintenance, and chemicals increase every year. We are at a point where not raising the rate will not allow the water department to function in a way that maintains certifications and assurances that residents are drinking safe water. Part of the problem is that when people use less water, there is less revenue coming into that enterprise system. To present a balanced budget and maintaining level of services, a rate increase to $5.15 is necessary from the current rate of $4.65. That's a 50-cent rate increase. Had the city been proposing incremental rate increases over the last 7 years and arguably over the last 10 years on a regular basis, the jump wouldn't be 50 cents, it would be much smaller. But we are where we are, and we have to work with that. The budget for the water department is $6,967,000. Let me repeat that. $6,967,008.94. Excuse me, which is the amount without indirect costs. The budget for the water department with indirect costs is $801,063.22. The indirect cost is something that is subject to editorials in the Sun Chronicle on a regular basis. It is important that the public knows that indirect costs are something that we are required by state law, and it's monitored by the Department of Revenue to levy against the Water and Wastewater Department. The budget director, the city solicitor, the accounting office, the auditor's office, the mayor's office, several offices, treasurer's office, collector's office, they all provide a service that the water and wastewater departments benefit from. And as an enterprise system, the water and wastewater operate on their own revenues. However, they're not paying for these services directly. That's why they're called an indirect cost. Now, I know the municipal council knows that, but I say this for point of clarification for the public that's watching. That's something that is not arbitrarily created by the city. The indirect cost is calculated by a consultant that's hired and certified with the state to provide these services to us. But that is something that is part of the budget, is that the calculation of that indirect cost. So the water department is not able to continue to operate with a healthy retained earnings fund without the proposed rate increase. If there were a way to avoid a rate increase, the water department would have already done it. The importance of a retained earnings fund is that such a fund allows the department to do critical capital projects without the need to bond for these projects. And in the budget message, I've listed some high-profile, very expensive projects that are ongoing. The wastewater department, I have a very similar message for the wastewater department. Almost word for word, in fact. There has only been one wastewater department rate increase. In fact, point of clarification, I say the word fee increase in the last 10 years, but what I should have said was a rate increase. There's only been one wastewater department rate increase in the last 10 years, and it was FY 2014, voted on in June of 2013. As with the water department, a fee increase are not what anyone wants, but the cost of salaries, materials, maintenance, and chemicals increase every year. We are at a point where not raising the rate will not allow the wastewater department to function in a way that maintains certifications and assurances that local streams and rivers are not contaminated. To present a balanced budget and maintaining the level of services, a rate increase from $9.60 from residential customers is necessary. The current rate is $9.10. So just like the water department, that's a 50-cent increase. The industrial rate will increase in lockstep and remain 90 cents higher, moving from, excuse me, I have a typo in my own budget message, remain higher. It'll be from $10 to $10.50. The budget for the wastewater department is $9,699,623.10, which is the amount without the indirect costs. The budget for the wastewater department with the indirect costs is $10,339,276.64. And as I said with the water department, the wastewater department is not able to continue to operate with a healthy retained earnings fund without a rate increase. As with the water department, if there was a way to avoid a rate increase, we would have already done it. The importance of a retained earnings is that such a fund allows the department to do critical capital projects without the need to bond for these projects. And I didn't mention this as with the water department, but it's true for water and wastewater in the bonding process. Sometimes the amount of time it takes to get a bond authorization from start to finish is months. It takes many, many months. Sometimes these projects, these capital projects, these emergency projects, they can't wait many months. We have water leaking sometimes, we have wastewater that needs to be addressed immediately. Those things have to be done immediately, and that's why bonding for them is really not a good option. Some of the non-emergency projects, we have and do bond for those, but that's why the importance of the retained earnings. And with the water department, as is with water department, with the wastewater, I list several of these projects. So those are the two messages. As I said before, we've presented a balanced budget. I don't want to be in a situation where we have to propose a rate increase for water or wastewater coverage. It hasn't been proposed or hasn't been voted on in 7 years. That's the point we're at. It wasn't my idea. It was something that the departments came to me and said, we can't continue to operate with the cost of chemicals going up, with the cost of salaries going up. In fact, we use retained earnings to balance the budget in both of these departments. That's something we've done in the past. But when you talk to the wastewater department superintendent, you're going to hear a real concern in his voice when he explains the need to raise the rate. Again, none of us I don't want to propose it, you don't want to vote on it, but it is something that the citizens are getting the benefit of. And we have an obligation to act responsibly and to provide them with clean water and clean wastewater coming out of that department after it's been processed. So with that, I don't have anything more to add, but if you have any immediate questions, I'll be happy to take them, or we can wait until we meet again, I believe in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time, whichever, 2 weeks' time. Okay, very good.
2+ for the public hearing. But Jeremy will do the department head meetings. Jeremy, if you don't mind just coming to the podium and identifying yourself. I know many counselors have met you or spoken to you on the phone, and Council Waterman will have you come back before the council to vote your appointment out of committee. But I just want to quickly review, and Jay can touch base with you if I miss any. But I think it will be important for, and we've gotten this generally year over year, the balance in any pending expenditures for stabilization and free cash, balance in pending expenses for the revolving funds, retained earnings for water and wastewater expenditure over the last fiscal year, and any pending that you know of or that are before the council or the mayor is contemplating the rest of this fiscal year. I'm not sure if we received the consultant report back on the retained earning, on the indirect fee schedule, but the council did fund that. So if you got it, I want a copy to go to all the councilors for review, and as part of the deliberation on water and wastewater. And then the ad is critically important to get that done with Virginia tomorrow in order to maintain the timeline. I don't know if anybody else has any logistical questions for either Jeremy or the mayor. Now would be the time. And again, the mayor will come back with Jeremy for the public hearing presentation, to give us an update on any revenue changes or anything that you see sort of happening with the landscape of at the state level, but just as a general statement of support publicly for the budget, and then anything going forward. Is there anybody that has any questions? I see the mayor has another comment, but before we do that, is there anybody that has any questions for either the mayor or for Jeremy? Okay, I don't hear anybody, but that sometimes it takes a second. So in the meantime, Mayor.
Yeah, to your point about the ask to see the new indirect study, we will give that once it's completed. We got back what we call an incomplete version. We have a somewhat new treasurer and a new collector. And one of the things that was discovered in the first draft of the indirect cost study that came back to us was that the costs associated with the collector's office and the treasurer's office was woefully underestimated. And I believe it was Jeremy and Deb, Deb Gould, the auditor, I believe it was them who I noticed this when they were reviewing that. And then when we looked at this, we found that there were several things that the treasurer's office and the collector's office were doing, but were not communicated to the consultant. So by no fault of the consultant, and really it just happened to be this way, it's really nobody's fault, the study was incomplete. That was the best way we could describe it. It's an incomplete study. So the study is being further reviewed by the consultant, and that will hopefully be ready very soon. We don't know when exactly. We should have had it in January. We got it just about 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago. But I'll turn it over to Jeremy. Do you want to add anything? Because you were very involved with that. So I'll let Jeremy talk a little bit more about that if he has anything else to add. But I just wanted to make that clear that we're actually, this budget for the water and wastewater is using the old indirect cost study, not the current one. So I'll let Jeremy add to that if you'd like.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is my first time addressing council, so thank you all for having me and listening to our time here. I started about a month ago and dove right into this, so this has been an interesting process. So the indirect study that was conducted by the outside consultant, like the mayor said, had a few things that we thought were not communicated back and forth between those participating in the study and those authoring the study, so we're seeking clarification. What you'll see in the 21 budget for the enterprise, and it's in the budget communication, is that it works off of the 2015 study done by the Abrams Group. One thing that we see, not having to do with either of these parties, but doing studies 4 and 5 years apart, we see, one-time spikes or dips in a particular department's support of the enterprise fund. When that happens at this point in time study, we then see large shifts in the percentage applied, and that's not what this should be getting at. What we want is an accurate overtime picture that we can kind of smooth rather than seeing big spikes that are difficult to plan for budgetarily. So our hope in working with revising this study, this incomplete study as we're calling it, is to then more frequently do less drastic revisions to what departments do and to support the enterprise funds. So more updates on that coming forward, but just as an approach on what we're thinking, we want a more holistic approach to how departments support each other. And I will note one thing that will look a little bit different in your enterprise.
There is a proposed rate increase, as we talked about. The way these departments bill, they bill quarterly. So a bill that comes in the first 3 months of the fiscal year is going to span water usage from under the current rate and the new rate. So what this budget conservatively estimates is that 1/4 of the total cubic footage billed by each respective department will be billed under the current rate, and 3/4 of the cubic footage will be billed under the proposed rate. So you'll see a revenue projection that's split between 75 and 25. It's different than what you're used to seeing, what you used to see. So I wanted to explain that before.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation, because in my bag in the office is bills that Council Conti got from constituents, I want to say from 2012. I met with Barry and the mayor and Councilor Reynolds, and I met with them because there was great concern in the community about using water in the previous, under the previous rate and getting the bill. So I appreciate, and we've been told since that time that it was close to impossible to fix that. So Mayor, appreciate that fix. You and I talked about it several times over the past couple of years, that if you use it during a time, you should pay that rate. So I appreciate that fix in that adjustment. I don't have any additional questions. The hard copies will be in everybody's box. They can come pick them up. Last call for any logistics questions for the mayor or for Jeremy at this time. Otherwise, we'll move on with the meeting. Mayor, did you have any final comments? Jeremy, anything else to add? Anything from the council before we let the mayor and the budget
Mr.
director
President, this is
go?
Councilor Conti. The
Yes,
conversation that was interjected was garbled and not understandable on this end. So I would appreciate an opportunity at some point to have a public discussion about that water billing issue. That completes my question.
Yep, we will do that in committee, Rick, in the
you.
budget committee meeting. We will do that. I will bring the bills you gave me back. I think in 2012, we discussed it. You gave me copies of them. Council Reynolds and I have discussed it many times. In fact, had a meeting with the former administration about it, and Mayor Haro and I have talked about it several times. So we can fully vet that conversation at the appropriate time.
I just sent the PDFs of the complete budget and budget message of the general and the enterprise systems to Virginia students for distribution electronically to the 11 council, Google, the city, and to these posted on the website.
Great. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mayor, thank you. Jeremy, thank you for coming down. You can put the hard copies out in everybody's box on your way out. That would be great. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks, and stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you.
All right. So we will move on to the reading of the mayor, excuse me, the mayor's communication. Mr. Withers, would you kindly read this evening's communication?
I certainly will. May 26, 2020, dear municipal councilors, I respectfully submit to your honorable body the City of Attleboro's general government annual budget for fiscal year 2021.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please. Also, as the mayor just said, the was sent via email. You should get that at any moment, and there'll be hard copies in your boxes next time you come to City Hall.
Are we doing voting a public hearing on this?
Yes, we do. Thank you for reminding me. But I need to look back at my notes and see when we said we were going to do that. Mr. Delicio, would you like to have a public hearing on this matter on June 16th?
Yes, I would, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'll require a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Holmes, and this is for the public hearing for the budget on 6/16.
Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Dolan,
Yes.
Mr. Cobus,
Yes.
Mr. Delicio,
Yes.
Vice President Jackson. Thumbs
Give
up.
the thumbs up, Kate.
What do you think?
I know she's having audio challenges tonight.
I know she is. Ms. Jackson.
All right, I would just go to the next person.
Okay,
Steve.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes,
10 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you. Motion passes.
All right. I hereby request your honorable body. What's that?
No,
We
keep
good?
going.
Okay. I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $150,000 of stabilization fund from account stabilization fund to fund the fiscal year 2021 general government annual budget.
Budget Appropriations Committee, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Change that vote to 11-0, Mr. Cooper, is that all right?
No, I already declared it, so we'll
All
wait
right,
till
yeah,
the
that's
next one.
true. You're right. I respectfully request your honorable body, under the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, as amended, to approve the following expenditure limits for the following revolving funds outlined under Chapter 20 of the revised.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes.
2021. Fund, police replacement of vehicles, $280,000. Fund, off-street parking, $250,000. Protective inspection services, $250,000. Residential special waste disposal, $1,300,000. Council on Aging, $20,000. Cape and Park Zoo, $1,500,000. Fire alarm system testing, $40,000. Fire ambulances, $1,300,000. Health immunization, $10,000.
Steve, you froze. All right, I'm going to resume at Fund 2614 Recreation, $200,000. Fund 2615 Animal Welfare, $6,000. Fund 2616 Police False Alarm, $50,000. Fund 2618 Animal Shelter Building, $20,000. And Fund 2619 Fingerprinting, $5,000. Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
Could you not hear me, Mr. Cooper?
Yeah, we lost you at health immunization, Steve, so I just finished the reading.
Okay, thank you. I respectfully request your honorable body to approve the solid waste fee of $234.12. This is an increase from fiscal year 2020.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
I respectfully request your honorable body to approve the solid waste fee of $60.79 per unit to be credited to fund residential special waste disposal for fiscal year 2021.
Yes, that just for the record, that's fund number 2604. That's
Yep.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
I am pleased to present your honorable body the proposed water and wastewater enterprise budgets for fiscal year 2021.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please. And Mr. Delicio, would you like to have a public hearing on that matter on June 16th?
I would indeed, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'll require a roll call vote for that public hearing request, beginning with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Waterman,
Yes.
Vice President Jackson, Mr. Delicio,
Yes.
Mr. Cobus,
Yes.
Ms. Dolan,
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
President Cooper,
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right. I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $320,345.72 from account Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings to fund the fiscal year 2021 Water Enterprise budget.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please. Steve, we lost you. So I'm going to start at
On or
number
after?
9.
What's that?
We lost you after item number 8. Start with item number 9.
I respectfully request, is that better?
Yes, sir.
I respectfully request your honorable body to approve the water fee of $9
Yes.
and $10.50 for 100 cubic feet for residential and industrial respectively. This is an increase from fiscal year 2020. The rate applies to the consumption on or after July 1st, 2020. Bills that span the old rate and the new rate will be prorated appropriately.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
I respectfully request your honorable body appropriate $305,704.93 from account Wastewater Enterprise Fund retained earnings to fund the fiscal year 2021 wastewater enterprise budget.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
And just a correction, President Cooper, number 9 should be wastewater, correct? The wastewater fee? Because number 7 was the water fee.
That is correct.
Okay,
Wastewater is $9.60.
right, and that's number 9. Okay,
Yes, sir. That's
Thank
an
you.
error on the communication. Yep.
so I read number 10, didn't I? No.
Yes, and that Budget and Appropriation
Thank
Committee.
you. Sorry, this is tough tonight. I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $61,919.06 from account Wastewater Enterprise Fund retained earnings to fund the wastewater betterment share of debt in the fiscal year 2021 budget.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
As you are aware, a portion of the water and wastewater enterprise budget fiscal year 2021 budgets include an indirect cost allocation that is used to pay for costs incurred within the general government budget. In accordance with the indirect rates established by the Abrams Group, I hereby request your honorable body to transfer $834,054.28 from Fund 6100, which is the Water Enterprise Fund, to the General Government Fund to fund the indirect costs for fiscal year 2021. The dollar amount presented is from fiscal year 2021 budget book. Please note this figure excludes the OPEB contribution and all debt expenses. I also hereby request your honorable body to transfer $639,656.54 from Fund 6000, which is the Water Enterprise Fund, to the General Government Fund to provide funding for the indirect costs for fiscal year 2021 budget. The dollar amount presented is from the fiscal year 2021 budget book. This required transfer also excludes the OPEB contribution and the expenses associated with the debt.
Thank you. Budget and Appropriations Committee, please. And those two will have to be separated out as separate votes, one for water, one for wastewater.
Okay. Sincerely, Paul Haru, Mayor.
Thank you. There are no other communications this evening. We are operating under suspended rules, and there is one committee that will be reporting this evening, and that is Councilor. And with that, I'll recognize Councilor Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Reporting for the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee, I have two motions to bring before the council this evening. From the docket of March 17th, 2020, I entertain a motion to approve the program year 2020 CDBG, that would be Community Development Block Grant budget, in the amount of $473,246, and to authorize the mayor to submit the program year 2020 annual action plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development on or before June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Councilor Conti, any additional comments?
I do not. We've discussed this quite thoroughly over the last 6 weeks, and I think everyone understands what's going on.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the council?
President Cooper,
Yes.
I just want to disclose for the record that I have recently signed up to volunteer at the Hebron Food Pantry, which is listed as a beneficiary of the budget. I have no financial interest in the organization, nor any kind of authority over its operations, so I do not believe it poses any kind of a conflict with my voting.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Councilor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Dolan,
Yes.
Mr. Cobus,
Yes.
Mr. Delistio,
Yes.
Vice President Jackson, Mr. Waterman,
Abstain.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
From the docket of June 2nd, 2020, I entertain a motion to suspend part of the Community Development Block Grant Citizens Participation Process, which calls for a public hearing to amend the program year 2019 budget to include $256,059 in CARES Act funds, and to authorize the submission of an amendment to the program year 2019 budget to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development on or before June 12, 2020. Authorization on all three requests are needed on or before June 2nd, 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any additional questions or comments? Councilor Conti.
No, you said it earlier. That's a $256,000 boost that is much appreciated, and will be spent over the course of the year. Dorothy Brissett's doing a fabulous job keeping track of all the changes and all the developments and informing the council. She's a very good communicator, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the council?
President
Councilor
Cooper,
DeSimone?
as I disclosed last week, I want to reiterate that I serve as a volunteer for the Attleboro YMCA on the Enterprise Risk Committee. I have no voting power or the authorization over their operations, nor do I have any financial interest in that organization that would preclude me from voting on this.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Waterman,
Abstain.
Vice President Jackson, Mr. DeLisio, Mr. DeLisio, Mr. DeLisio,
Yes.
Mr. Kobus,
Yes.
Ms. Dolan,
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
President Cooper,
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Mr. President, that concludes the business that the Capital Improvement and City Development Committee has to bring before the council this evening. We look forward to a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. All the other committees I'm not going to recognize this evening during the special meeting. You all will have committee meetings posted at the appropriate time. I am going to quickly run through the budget timeline as we know it today. You will get an updated email from Virginia on this schedule, but I wanted to just quickly run through it for all of you so you can plan accordingly. May 27th at 6 p.m. via Zoom, there'll be department head presentations and discussions from the fire department, DPW, and water department. On May 28th at 6 p.m., there'll be meetings with the department heads, police department, wastewater, and school department. On June 2nd is a regular council meeting. And again, that council meeting will start. We're going to go back to the 7 p.m. schedule. The budget meetings tomorrow and the 27th and 28th are at 6 p.m., just so you're aware. On June 3rd, there's a budget committee meeting at 6 p.m. for the following departments: Citywide, Zoo, and Health for solid waste. On the 4th of June, there's a general budget discussion meeting. Any questions, comments, follow-up that you would like the chair to do, that can be discussed at that meeting. On June 9th is the regular committee meetings, where again, you'll have the opportunity to get answers to your questions that you may have had from tonight forward, really, but during the deliberations on the 4th. On June 16th, there's a regular council meeting. That'll be a special meeting, I apologize, on the 16th, starting at 7 p.m., and that'll be the public hearing for the budget. On the 17th, there'll be a budget committee meeting to start to talk through particular items or challenges that the council sees, and that things that may want to be included in the budget message. On June 18th, there'll be a budget committee meeting. And again, it's really just discussing the message and possible vote on any of the matters. As you know, there's a lot of votes required, so anything that can be done, revolving funds, that kind of thing. Again, on the 19th, there'll be a budget committee meeting posted for 6 p.m. to vote on any outstanding issues, matters, or votes that are required. All to be wrapped up on 6/23 at a special meeting for budget items before the full council. So that's the schedule as we know it today. It's changing day to day, but that's hopefully we've nailed it down based on the public hearing and advertising requirements. Councilor DeLisio, anything to add?
No, I just want to thank yourself, Virginia, Deb Bull, for your help. I think the mayor did a nice job presenting the budget tonight. It's not an easy budget year. We all know that. We're up against an abridged budget season. So what I would suggest is that everyone really kind of start looking that budget over with a fine tooth comb. Any questions that I can answer from anyone who's not Rick or Todd, certainly let me know. But it's going to be challenging at times, but we have more meetings than we hopefully will need, but I'd rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them. So President Cooper, thank you for your help on getting this situated, and Virginia for everything you've done as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments before we adjourn?
Yeah, I have one, President Cooper.
Yes, sir.
It's addressed to Jay. Jay, tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, is that going to be on Zoom or is that going to be live at City Hall?
It's going to be Zoom. All the department head meetings are going to be live via Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Nope, thank you.
And I'll also be via Zoom for the next two meetings. I won't be here in City Hall. City Hall won't be accessible through the council. Any additional comments? Council Conti, did you have a question?
Councilor Blair asked it for me and I got my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Not hearing any or seeing any, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any additional questions? Seeing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Councilor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Dolan,
Yes.
Jacobus,
Yes.
Mr. Delicio,
Yes.
Vice President Jackson, Mr. Waterman,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
President Cooper,
Yes,
11 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you. We are adjourned at, motion passes. We're adjourned at 7:14. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.